what have you been up to? I suppose we haven't really heard much from you in the content world, at least.
It's been a few years. I did a series called Retrophilia during really it was sort of birthed out of the pandemic. They say nostalgia is sometimes a good shelter in the storm, right? And so, me and my co-host Audra Wolfman, we made a show about the 1990s, which was, when we were growing up. So, and we tried to take a little different take on it and not just do slap bracelets and O.J. Simpson. And I think it came out pretty well. We wrapped it up last year, and I've just been kind of letting the ground lay fallow a little bit. So this is my first time back on the air, as you say, in a while. Good to be here.
Do you think you might start a new show then?
I don't know. We'll see where this goes. I might just be full time on the Mauve Zone. You never know. So.
Well, the pay's really good on this.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's why I'm here. So
yeah, we've got good healthcare. Was it you guys do? You have to get healthcare built into jobs, don't you? There, is that right?
Most Americans, yes. In some states, you can be on like something like Medicaid, or you might get an Obamacare, Affordable Care Act subsidy. Although that particular issue is a bit of a hot button in the United States right now. So
I think Willow is going to be joining us as well. So even though I'm recording, I shall add her in.
Excellent.
During the recording. I've just sent her the link. So, right. Have you met Willow before? Do you remember there was a show called The Nonsense Bazaar? I don't know if you ever saw that, Raymond.
No, I don't recall the Nonsense Bazaar. That sounds like a great title, though.
It wasn't dissimilar to Sitting Now and hang on, she's got to finish boiling her mum's medication stuff, whatever that means.
Okay. We've got to prepare a tincture.
I see. Yeah, okay. I'll say, okay, we're here now. If you can join, we'll add you in.
If you dare.
But don't rush. All right, cool. All right, let's get some semblance of order. So I've spotted something really interesting. So in the previous shows, we were talking about this idea of a new satanic panic and Tucker Carlson suddenly doing shows on the Satanism and the occult. And I started to look into it a little bit well, mate, is that just is that just happening on its own? Is that happening in a vacuum? So I started to look at news reports and started to find it. When I did my bachelor's degree, it was in journalism. And there's this thing you can do called an advertorial, which is basically, I've made them myself for companies as well. They're basically like a pre-written news article that you send out you just sort of bomb journalists with. And then the journalists on the other end, if they pick it up, will top and tail it with their own. They'll basically take the text that you send them and then top and tail the text with their own sort of journalism, essentially. And so it's a win-win. The company gets, free PR or paid for PR, and the journalist looks like they've been busy writing when actually all they've done is written a paragraph at the top and at the bottom. And I started looking at news articles about Satanism, and kept finding these articles about people that had been tricked, as it were, into becoming Satanists, and then now were members of the church, like priests. And I thought that's weird. It's strange that all these news agencies started running these stories at the same time around the world. So there's
Catholic.
Well, this is what I thought originally, but then I noticed that because two of them were Catholic, but then another two of them were one was an evangelical church, and that's the American one, and one was an Orthodox church, and that was a European one. And they all seemed to come out within the same week or 2 weeks. And then I noticed something kind of interesting, that there were all those types of articles, those advertorial type articles, where they kind of seem to say the exact same thing, but with a top and tail. So then I started to think, well, if this, I mean, previously satanic panics have happened. No one's really isolated like a source, like who originally started it. I don't think, unless I'm wrong. There's not really been a smoking gun, or as it were. There's not a Svengali behind it all, or a someone behind in the shadows sort of pulling the strings. But so I started to think like, well, this must have been paid for by someone. You don't make PR articles like this and send them out, and in some cases you pay for them. I mean, the BBC ran with one of these. There's a BBC article about this guy. I'll put it in the links for the show notes, but someone's paying someone. And so at the moment I'm looking for who the PR agency is, because it's the same PR agency. Oh, this is the other thing I noticed. So it was the British guy in one of the articles on the British version, the BBC article. I looked him up, tried to figure out, because it says he's become a priest in this district. It doesn't say the exact church. So I looked around all this district. There aren't actually that many. I think he was Church of England, actually, not Catholic.
Okay.
So there's not that many Church of England churches in this area. So I sort of nailed it down as 4. And then I started to look on their websites or made phone calls to find out he's not a priest in any of them. He's an actor. I found his page. He's a paid actor. So
really, and this BBC ran?
BBC ran with this, yeah. So I emailed the journalist of the BBC article and said, "You realise that this is a paid actor and blah blah blah." The article's still up. You still see it, but this guy is not a priest. He's an actor, and his PR agency. So I found one of the PR agencies, and their job is to create info kind of commercials or info kind of advertorials, and it's like, who's paying them? It's like,
right.
Well,
yeah.
What was the timing on these? Because like, did it come out when?
They were precursors to the Tucker video, so
yeah,
they were.
I'm thinking movie wise, like, wasn't there? Didn't they do a new Exorcist thing or something? Like,
Yeah.
Was it like there was some kind of like exorcism oriented movie that had some big ballyhoo around it, where they were doing like because they hired a priest in the United States to do to bring out like holy water at the opening. I forget what it was. I don't remember what the movie was. Let me see.
How long ago was that?
I don't know. That's why I'm wondering like if it fit within that time frame, because they were doing enough to get a priest to come out to the movie theater, you know. So if they're going to spend the money on that, then I would think that it's possible they did info things like that.
I think we'll be lucky if this is an AR campaign, David. God, I hope you're right. I'll tell you this, gentlemen, there is plenty of precedent going back to the Satanic Panic of the 80s of people claiming that they were formerly Satanists in order to get themselves status so they can get bookings at churches and go around the circuit. I believe Mark Warneke was a big feature or a big figure back in the 80s I believe he would do this, where he said he had a shadowy past and all of this stuff. Most of these people don't, some of them may have like known somebody, right, that was into the occult or magic at one point in their life, but it's sort of like, it's the same group of people. It's sort of like when these kind of people say, I have a black friend or something like that, it's really all about gaining status with the church group that's your audience, right?
Well,
and so
the Christian market is a $1 trillion market too, so you can make some serious money on product and merchandise and book sales and speaking engagements, and that it's a fairly lucrative little prospect there. My favorite
absolutely
is Bill Schnabelben. Is that his name? He actually knew Berteau up in Chicago, so he was legitimately within some like groups and stuff. And I think his name is Frater Barabbas. Wrote some really interesting reflections on Schnabelben, if I'm pronouncing his name right, on his time in the kind of a culture in Chicago in like the 70s and that. And like Bill Schnabelben was like quite the spicy boy during that time. And then he became this like kind of like Christian Zionist, like anti-occult, like anti-satanic speaker and writer, and that an interesting transition, especially reading the write-up on his time when he was actually in the occulture, because he definitely was just he was a spicy boy. Yeah, he was doing some stuff.
It seems like the thing that really stuck out to me when I read the BBC article in particular was the way the guy had become a Satanist was really interesting. So he said something like, "I picked up a copy of the Satanic Bible and I was transformed." You know, it's like it's almost like being knocked over with the power of Christ kind of thing. He just picked up Anton LaVey's book, and he was all of a sudden a Satanist and started to act in a deviant manner and all this kind of stuff. And and then he said he fancied this girl, and she convinced him to go to a week-long Christian festival, as you do as a Satanist, and that's what converted him back to being a Christian. And it's like, that's not real. That's not a real story. You don't pick up. I mean, LaVey's books. I mean, it's a bit of a joke anyway, isn't it? The LaVey book. It's just a sort of like thrown together kind of collection of stolen ideas, essentially, isn't it? I mean, it's not a
right.
cohesive text, is it? Really?
Right, but at the same time, isn't this like a par for the course American Christianity experience? You know, this is not very different from a soccer mom talking about how the Lord led her here, led her there, how every little event in life has a certain supernatural significance that it takes on. This just amps that up and makes it sexier, basically, is all we're doing. So.
What's interesting is why now as well. This is the thing I keep thinking, like, why this particular point in time are we starting to see all this stuff again? And that's the interesting thing to me. Is it to do with this kind of? Is it political?
Sure. Yes. Look at your country, Ken. Right. Look around you at the churches in your country. Most of them are empty. Right. And we have a whole cohort of super fascist white people here in the United States that are looking at you guys and saying, "Oh, we're going to go there too." And the only way that we won't go there is if we start coercing people into going to church, going to religious schools, stuff like that. And so this is just a precursor, I think, for a more coercive form of Christianity that we're going to see in the 21st century, for sure.
There's also that cultural Christianity thing, isn't there, as well? The what do you call it? The idea. I was talking about this in the last episode of Sitting Now. Actually, this idea of like being a Christian, well, sort of living with the Christian values, but not actually being a Christian, kind of thing. And even Richard Dawkins recently started talking about this, where he was talking about how he obviously he wasn't religious. If anyone's not going to be religious, it's going to be the author of The God Delusion, isn't it? But he did appreciate the values of Christianity and how that kind of managed society and all this kind of thing. And you see people like Jordan Peterson talking about it and all sorts of people. And I wonder if it does seem to be a push to try and get people to be a bit more regressive, doesn't there, at the moment?
Right. There's a certain dehumanizing cynicism coming from all of these people. Like, we're all just peons who can't think, who can't control our own affairs, whatever. So we need some smarty pants like them to tell us that just keep in your place, right? It's like Confucianism or something. It's gross.
I know, Willow, you were looking at the
Hi.
You were looking at
Willow.
Hi.
Satanic stuff with me. You know, the articles we were looking at with the
yes. Okay, so I only butt in for like the last little bit of this conversation, but what it's making me think of is there was this person that I was in the beginning stages of a friendship with, sort of, feeling it out. We met at an open mic night, thought perhaps we can collaborate. When he was over my place, I could sense his eyes scanning the room. He was like looking at my tarot decks and my books, and he was scared. He asked me, "Why do you need that stuff?" And I said, "Well, I don't need it, but it's a useful tool to gain insight." And then he went into this story of how his dad brought home a haunted doll once, and he became convinced that the spirit in this doll possessed him, and he had to go drive up to Maine, like 5 hours away, to meet with a preacher who would do an at-home exorcism with him. And I'm like, my guy, the fear is inside the house. Like, I don't know. So clearly that friendship didn't pan out, but it was just very interesting. And I noticed over the course of the last couple of years or so, I've met people that did not grow up with religion, but had an instance of something like that, something like, oh, I was possessed by a doll, or I saw a ghost, or I played with a Ouija board, and they got so scared that they just ran to a church.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, if you look at like those narratives, right, like those are stock narratives. The fact that we can like name these things off, and like Ken was giving the example of this advertorial, which also had a stock narrative. That I think, like, if you look back at the history of the evangelical movement, you know, Billy Graham and the Billy Graham Association were one of the first organizations to actually do demographics. They did, they would hand out prayer cards at the rallies, right? So you'd have Billy Graham come, and then they would hand out prayer cards where everybody would write down, you know, my mom is sick, my mom is whatever, right? Or, you know, like my grandfather, I want prayer for this, or I need a job, or I need what, all of that. So if you have all that information, you've got their name, their address, their worries, right? Like what their concerns are, and you put that into a database, you can start to get an idea of kind of a demographic and a psychographic profile of an area. And there's actually examples of those kind of missionaries doing that in South America for the oil companies in the 50s, where the missionaries would be basically doing demographic research on the area for their evangelism. But then the oil companies would jump on that, and they would know who the leaders were in the area, who to talk to for land rights, and all the rest of it based on the data that the missionaries were gathering. So there's, you know, these tools, and like you know, you think of the 70s, the Jesus, what was it, the Jesus freak movement, right? There's always been within the organized kind of evangelical movement, there's always been a really, they do a really good job of frame jacking. So they jump into these cultural frames and then take them over and fill them with something else. And so with digital, all of that stuff, you think like Billy Graham Association in the 40s is starting to use demographics in a way that's, you know, more advanced than corporations, because corporations at the time, their advertising was very, you know, like blasted out, and like the idea of doing this market research wasn't fully formed yet. But the Billy Graham Association is doing this. Forward that to now with digital and, you know, the kind of information warfare space and all the rest of it. You know, we now have, and you know, you look at too, like there's people like C. Peter Wagner, who was at the, I forget what it was. It was a place in Colorado Springs, but he was
Focus on the family.
What's that?
Focus on the family. Yeah.
No, this was a university. I'm thinking a seminary.
Yeah,
it was
excuse
like,
me. Sorry.
Like it was, and he was based in Colorado Springs, but he was right next to really advanced university level sociology thinking. And this he started applying this in the 80s to evangelism. And so what you have in his work is a really interesting example of really high level functional ideas of demographics and sociology, and how to change population and how to change minds and psychology. And what they found was that spiritual warfare was one of the easiest ways to do that. So he has a thing called strategic spiritual warfare, where what they would do is that they would when they were on, you know, mission trips and that, they would identify the overarching power from the traditional culture, and then they would defeat that power in what he called I forget what it was, like a power encounter, I think is the term he used for it. So, and it was based on the biblical idea that when the apostles went out, they would have these power encounters with the local like sorcerer or the local whoever. And you can go through the Middle Ages and see this too. Like they would go through and you would confront the local sorcerer and defeat them, and that would be the power of God, and then you would be able to use that for your mission work. And so they've just taken that concept and put in what's essentially psyops and cognitive warfare and the rest of it. And so they've blended these two into a really perfect kind of storm of stuff. And so when you look at stuff like the podcasts and all the rest of it, you notice that they are using these kind of stock stories, these stock narratives, and these stock anecdotes. And all of these different people are having these experiences, and you can start to see that there is a kind of shape to it. And then when you go back and actually read the material from the people who are training those people, training the evangelists and that, and training into the culture of these narratives, it's a very coordinated system that's together. And these things too are they're parachurch, which means that they sit above denomination. So the spiritual warfare stuff is a bridge between Orthodoxy, Catholicism, evangelical, and then it's really interesting to see the conversations from groups that aren't amongst those, because in the public we're blasted with the folks who have media, but like the Amish aren't talking, and like there's a ton of different denominations which are much more traditional and not involved in any of this stuff whatsoever. And some of them even have anti-heresy ministries to look at the spiritual warfare domain to show how these people are being manipulative and are not following Christianity. So when you get really deep into this stuff, it's very interesting.
Before we move on, I just wanted to quickly point out Kevin Cruz's book, In God We Trust Incorporated. Great survey of some of the stuff David's been talking about, at least the mid-20th century Billy Graham capitalism meets Southern Protestantism kind of stuff. That's a great place to find more information about that.
Yeah, Jeff Charlotte's The Family is a good one too.
Yeah, I was watching. I just literally posted on the City Now Instagram. Your industry in church over there is insane, isn't it? I didn't realize like how big it actually was, because I know that when I was working for a company doing like kind of PR, I guess, for them and commercials and things recently, they were always trying to tap into the US church market because because the video market there is huge as well. Within that world. And but the thing I posted earlier was hilarious. It's it's the latest story on the Sitting Now Instagram, but it's this guy, it's this Megachurch, and but the show they put on, it's like a full-on, it's almost like an arena show. It's displayed like, it appears there's like smoke everywhere, he's like flying in the air, and then he's talking about walking in the blood of Jesus, and then he turns his heels up in his shoes and they're red, and it's like it's like, oh my god, they thought this one through. It's like and then he's going, oh, by the end of this session I want to earn $4 million for some charity in Kenya or something, because you're not leaving here until we've raised $4 million. And it's like, what? It's crazy. It's like I mean I think I jokingly said on the post that if my churches were more like that when I was young, Sitting Now would be a very different show. I think it'd be. That's right.
That's right. Be a little bit more like some shows I did, because God, I grew up in some of that crap, for sure. And it is a real spectacle.
Yes, that's the word that was going through my mind. Spectacle.
Now, any of you guys catch that Jenny Nicholson video, 3 hours about the church Christmas pageants? And there are these multi-million-dollar productions. So what this guy's doing, Kenneth, this megachurch, is just taking stuff that already exists in that megachurch culture, which is usually reserved for holidays, and just bringing it into the weekly, just really amping it up. So
before we get off this too, I think we should also point out though that like Tibetan Buddhism is no different. Right, like you can look at the spread of Buddhism and even yoga culture, right? When it was originally tied to Hinduism during the 1800s, coming into the U.S., all of the same techniques, right? Like and this is not saying anything against that, because I mean, if you listen to Rinpoche's talk about Tibetan Buddhism, The more honest ones will just be like, yeah, we did a sales job. Like, this is a sales job. And it's just basically to get into the culture and to get the ideas spread.
Right.
But they know that when you wear the costume, right, like that you know, and you find this, I mean, when you start to do like academic research into spirituality and magical religious beliefs and the way that these things kind of spread, the show is part of it. And it, you know, it just happens that for Christianity became so immensely tied into, like you said, Raymond, the kind of the rise of capitalism and these really grandiose techniques. Those megachurch techniques actually come from folks like Amy Semple McPherson, who was a Hollywood evangelist in the early 20th century. And she was coming out during the time when PR was developing. And when these kind of like when the sideshow was becoming the way that companies marketed. And so she brought these massive, she would ride a motorcycle out onto stage, and they had these massive sets and everything, and like it was complete showmanship. And it just, now we have all this technology, and so we can do it a lot cheaper, you know. And again, the market is huge. I mean, just the Christian market alone is like trillions of dollars. Add the Buddhist market onto that, the yoga market, all these markets. The amount of money here is massive. And then also political influence, right? You have the ability to get into people's heads, to shape their reality, and you're able to move that, you know.
Yes.
And it's, you know, and it's also no different, right, than the transhumanism stuff, right? Like with the stuff that Teal, which isn't transhumanism, but Teal's stuff with his with this kind of like AI like stuff, and then the new age. And interestingly too is you can compare it to the New Age movement and the occulture and see where those fail, right? Like where they weren't able to capture that, even though the New Age in the 80s was equally as artificial in terms of employing marketing and these kind of concepts.
Oh yeah,
they were trying to get their message out, but they didn't have the the grit to really get it going, you know, to the point. But it did spread out more diffusely than these things. Didn't have, I guess that it's more decentralized. But it's a really interesting, I mean, this is an interesting thing to look at, is just how beliefs and all of that are shaped, and how society is shaped through beliefs, and the amount of money that gets put into that. I wanted to ask really quickly before we get off this too, for the Advertorials, was it around September 2025 that these came out?
Yeah, I think some of them did. There's hang on, I'll see if I can find some of them. But so you think it might be linked to a film?
Conjuring, yeah.
Conjuring.
Oh my God.
Oh, that was a huge.
I've been sitting on this the whole time. This is what I would like to talk about before we go, because I'm so convinced that the anecdote that I brought up with this guy thinking that the solution to him being scared of a doll is needing an exorcism, where did he get that idea? Where is that being popularized? And I can't help but think that it has something to do with the Conjuring movies.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, right. Or Annabelle, the Annabelle.
Yeah,
there's a whole
precisely.
other series. Yeah.
So how does somebody that grew up in a secular household get the idea in their head that the solution to a problem that feels demonic or feels like scary to them, feels like something outside of them is influencing them unjustly? Where did that person get the idea that the solution to that is Christianity? Like, from the media, no doubt.
Yeah. I can't find it. I think it might have come down. I think they might have pulled the article down. You remember it, don't you, Willow? The one of the there were two. We found two distinct articles. One was an American guy covered in tattoos, and that ran on CNN, I think. And some was it CNN? It was one of those bigger news outlets. And we found one that was a BBC article that was a guy who'd picked up a copy of the Satanic Bible and converted to Satanism the moment he picked it up. Do you remember that one?
Right.
It was on the BBC, but it's gone. It's not on there anymore. So I wonder if they spotted it finally after email.
Good job, Ken.
You can probably Wayback Machine it and find it.
I'll find it. But it's it's not there. I've just searched Satanism and Satanist on the BBC website, and it's just not coming up anywhere. There's plenty of stuff about the ONA, but nothing about and about that Satanic temple, but I can't find anything about this article anymore. I think I screenshotted it though, so hopefully I'll be able to find it again. But
well, and it's interesting too because the Conjuring film. Well, so obviously the Warrens were tied to not like something that nothing that the Vatican recognized as Catholic, but they were tied to a traditionalist Catholic kind of movement as lay exorcists, which is interesting in and of itself because exorcism actually, like as a Catholic tradition, comes out of like it comes out of a lay tradition because you needed somebody who wasn't too sophisticated to be able to do the exorcism things. And if you look in the Tibetan tradition, most of the exorcisms are conducted by householders, so also not necessarily monastic and separate. They were people that were in the world and able to operate at that level. But so the Warrens, though they're they are what they are, right? Like I'm not going to say that the Warrens were
right
necessarily right, but they do fit in an interesting tradition that they're not like they're actually not as untraditional as they seem, being just regular people out there doing it. But,
it shouldn't be surprising that these kind of folk traditions, David, that we're seeing these cross-culturally, because like everyone's literate now. So if you go back and you read the gospel stories, Jesus and his apostles are constantly like exorcising and casting out demons, and we put them in the pigs, or cast them out of the people, put them in the pigs, and then the pigs run over the cliff. I mean, there's a lot of sort of fantastic stories like this. So if you're just a regular person somewhere in an isolated village or something, you're reading this, or even in a suburban American setting, it shouldn't be a surprise that you're trying to apply this to your life somehow, bring that into reality somehow.
Right. So and then it worked, like this person that I talked about, it did help him. Yeah. Were there other routes that he could have taken to feel relieved? Sure. But it did symbolically do its job.
Yeah. And the relief is a hook, right? Like the relief is a hook because you have the relief, and now you're in the organization with all these other layers that you didn't, doesn't necessarily serve your overall well-being.
And relying on someone else to, help you.
Yeah. Well, and somebody who's milking you. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of money and power in this stuff. So you basically have inserted yourself into it. You're worried that the devil's going to get you. And that was I wrote a piece on this back in 2013 on this dynamic, which I titled "Satan's Target Your Mind." But the idea was that they were telling you that Satan's target was your mind, but in reality, if you look at everything that these groups were doing on an organized level, they were actually the ones implementing the things that they were claiming that Satan was doing.
Oh yeah,
it's an interesting.
Well, what is it? Every accusation is a confession.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's about political. I think that's about a certain psychological space that people inhabit, and it takes them into all of these really sort of creepy side cultures that we have, for sure.
Yeah. Well, in the Conjuring movies, and just to really like loop back really quickly with the Conjuring thing, Conjuring movies and even The Exorcist, right? Even though the Vatican came out, and when The Exorcist came out, they were like, this movie is not good, right? There was a massive turn towards Catholicism, and in other areas there was a massive turn towards Pentecostal and charismatic exorcism at that time, because of the effect of that movie, which was also ballyhoo, right? Like all these stories about people vomiting and all the rest of it, that's ballyhoo, that's marketing. And so, these effects that The Exorcist was having, that was causing people to be like, oh my God, and it's suggestion as well. If you tell people that they're going to vomit when they go into a movie and they see it in the news, there's going to be some certain amount of the population who goes to the movie and vomits. So like you have this marketing for the movie, and then the movie becomes a really great propaganda for the Catholic Church. And then again, other groups that were doing exorcism as well. But with The Conjuring, there was a closer tie. So there's some media that came out when the first Conjuring came out, which was looking at it as actually evangelism for the Catholic Church. From the Catholic, they were accepting this was actually a kind of a tool that they could use to bring people in. And this goes back to the Jesus freak thing too, for the Billy Graham Association, and that where they were using the hippie movement a little bit late to the game with that, because this was in like the 70s by the time they got around to it. But they're frame jacking, so you got to have the frame first, right? But then tying youth culture ideas to Christianity, keeping the marketing and the branding, but removing the drugs and the rest of it, right? So they still have.
I mean, this is the origin of the youth group. If any of you were ever in a youth group, what David's talking about is the origin of that. They didn't have a youth ministry in the 30s. Yeah, but after the hippies, they did, because they needed a place to put you to kind of keep you.
Henrietta Meir was who founded the whole youth group idea. She was actually Billy Graham's mentor. And in an interesting way, they had a thing called the Fellowship of the Burning Heart, which Bill Bright, who ran Campus Crusade for Christ, and Billy Graham it was basically a study group with Henrietta, and but very mystical and very, very almost occulty in like the kind of framing of it. You had to have a burning heart for evangelism, but the language around it is it's really, really interestingly coded. And it comes out of that, like, again, you're hurting people, right? Like the youth group, right? You get them out and like you train them up, and then you move them into new things. It's really organized. And now with decentralized media and digital media, we're seeing this just spread virally,
right?
And spread.
Well, let me pose a question to everybody while we're kind of in this area, which would be, like the mission of Billy Graham in the mid 20th century, which was to like reach out to all these sort of suburban whites who really weren't connected to church, really weren't connected to religion. Okay. They largely accomplished that goal. Right. Mm-hmm. So now when we see this kind of evangelism in American culture, it almost feels like beating the dead horse.
Well,
like it's sort of like, let me introduce you to a Big Mac. Let me introduce you to a Coca-Cola. Like you've never heard of that before. Yeah. And so what is the use of these techniques now that everybody's already had a Big Mac? Well, what are we using it to just keep people close to the fold, keep people in the seats? What do we think?
I think, well, if you look at the time period, right, when Billy Graham came out, who supported him? It was Hearst. It was William Randolph Hearst gave him a ton of money to do those crusades. And what was really William Randolph Hearst's concern? It was anti-communism.
Anti-communism, yeah, absolutely.
And if you look at the history of the two world wars in the United States, World War I, they had trouble getting recruits because everybody felt that they were their own ethnic group. So Italian Americans were like, well, we're Italian and we're living in America, but why would we join some effort for America? We don't know about that, right? Like, and if you and German Americans, same thing. And all these different ethnic groups would be like, yeah, I don't know. We're in our little enclaves and like, we're doing our thing and we don't really need to join up for this America thing, right? And then what happens? You get folk music, Americana. And what that was the Library of Congress starts to collect the different musics of these ethnic groups and call it Americana and start to write the narrative of how all of these things are in the melting pot. And so you're bringing people into the idea of America. Get to World War II and you have an increase in that, right? We have the works, the regionalist paintings and all of these things which are driving this idea of America and are building the idea of America. And then post-World War II, you have the development of the really in-grounded evangelicalism tied to Billy Graham in that, which is directly tied to anti-communism.
Yep.
And so again, it's this identity structure. You're building this structure and this identity of what it means to be an American. And what you're doing when you put it at a religious level is you're putting God over it. And so therefore you have this authority to direct in a way, right? Godless communism. Yeah. So you're putting a really high stakes thing on it that can really deeply embed in people's lives. And see now is similarly, as we have different nationalist groups, all over the world building up, Christianity is a really nice horse to ride in on with that. Yep. Because it comes in peaceful and whatever, but you can also flip it to warfare, right? The Warrior Bride of Christ was a big thing in the 2000s. There was a lot of these parachurch organizations which were focusing on this idea of Joel's army, which was the idea of this end times army that was being built, and the Warrior Bride of Christ. So during the apocalypse and the end time, church militant, goes out and starts to do its thing. So it has a lot of use value. And the thing is, and it is, to Raymond, to your point with the butts and seats, you want those butts in the seats in a structured way so that you can implant your message, right?
Yeah.
So that you can have, like, if we look at it just from like and I think that's where the conversation gets confused, because people are like, you're looking at it as Christianity or is right or wrong, or not you, but it can really easily get into this like, well, I don't believe in this and whatever, and it's not a belief thing. Like it's a very callous, cold, calculated use of religious beliefs to move populations and to move money and to move power structures. So butts and seats serves multiple purposes. Butts and seats means they're going to give you their money. Butts and seats means they're giving you their attention, and other groups can come in and pay the speaker and say, hey, why don't we insert some of this messaging into that, right? And
there's a certain desperation that's connected to it right now, like in the current sense, because this is a group of people, especially if we're talking about like Southern Baptist pastors, for example. There's probably 10,000 of them. Okay. More than there are McDonald's general managers or Starbucks general managers, right? And these guys are looking at a world where every year there's fewer of them. Every year there's more, and they don't like this either. There's more non-white people in the United States, and these two things are connected in their minds. This cultural project is twofold, right? It's not just retain people in church, right? Keep them from leaving as you're shrinking by, Southern Baptist Convention is shrinking by about 250,000 members a year right now. But it's also that future, right? That future of that sort of Stephen Miller future, right? Where you're counting percentages on racial groups and you're trying to manipulate that in some way. These things all overlap, and there's this desperate urgency and accelerationism, Ken, which I think we've talked about a number of times. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that's really interesting is I've just found an earlier article on the BBC, and it's almost line for line exactly the same as the one it's gone, the one that came out last year. This is from 2018, and this guy is an actual priest, and he's from my hometown. He's from Brighton, of all the things, and I've just been looking him up. So he's, but what they do is they use these kind of quite clever linguistic triggers. So they say, if you basically, in the first section of the article, they kind of they sort of go through all the sins, as it were, to sort of show you. It's really clever how they've done it. So he says, my parents are committed Christians. A few years earlier, I had started hanging out at my local skate park in the southwest London and listening to death metal bands. I'd gotten into alcohol and drugs and lost my virginity at 12. It became a choice between hanging out with my friends in what I saw as the real world and blah, blah, blah. And then he says, one night I spotted the Satanic Bible at a mate's house. I took it from his bookshelf and read the whole thing in one go, written by the founder of the Church of Satan. And then he goes, the next day I had a huge row with my mum. So I locked myself in my room and started carving a pentagram, the symbol of the Church of Satan, onto my arm. And it just goes on. So it's triggering all of these kind of, like warnings.
And do you know what happened? Do you know what happened in 2018?
The Conjuring?
Nope. The Vatican was issuing statements on a rise in possessions, and they held a Vatican. They held an exorcism training in Rome.
Interesting.
So I think we found
this is Catholic as well. So this is St. Cuthbert's, I think is the name of the Cuthman's. Yeah, St. Cuthman's in Brighton. I might interview him.
This seems to be originating from the Vatican propaganda office, which I don't know what it. That actually was what it was called. I don't know what they call it now, but it seems to be, we're seeing a nicely coordinated messaging from the Vatican.
But this guy, there's videos all over. I mean, I found one just a second ago. Where is it? There's Joy. Oh, there's lots of Christian news covering it. There's BBC, CNN. Yeah, so they did a full-on job with this one.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's interesting. So it's. Yeah, I mean, it's possible that this is linked to a film release, but it does.
No, this one, 2018, is based on their is the Vatican's push for the Exorcism.
No, I mean the ones last year.
The new one. The new one. Yeah. Well, and the Conjuring again was tied to the Vatican. They were supportive of the Conjuring.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you some
Yeah.
links, because there's a whole history here that or a whole these things are explained in various news things from these times. We're just seeing a really good PR from the thing, which just look, and it's what I love about these topics is that you know, if you come from the corporate world and you're doing PR, you don't really have an idea for how this stuff works. Like, you have really mechanical, like very basic ideas for PR. But when you look at this, you see what these things can actually do and how powerful they really are. And, you know, like, you can really get a sense for what, you know, again, just the building of beliefs, the building of markets, the building of cultures. You know, if you can separate the belief disbelief thing from it and just look at it technically, it's really masterful. I have a joke with Mark Stavish, who runs the Institute for Hermetic Studies, that Christians do it better. You know, you look at the occulture and the New Age again, and you look at anyone trying to sell anything, even corporations, and the ways that the Christian church, largely based in the United States, but the Vatican as well, have used these ideas. And this goes back to with the Vatican. Everybody thinks that Giordano Bruno was burned in the 1400s because of his anti, you know, his ideas of science, right? Like, I think there was even a PBS show that had him as this martyr of science. But in reality, if you read Bruno's writing, what Bruno wrote about was actually, he was exposing these exact techniques. Jon Culiano has a great book called Eros and Magic in the Renaissance, which is about the Renaissance magic being very close to marketing and PR now, and the use of psychology and framing in that. And Bruno was really writing about these the ways that institutions and individuals can harness belief and can harness focus in order to change and manipulate structures in the culture. And that is much more damning to the Vatican, you know, and to the powers that be at the time than anything written about whether or not, you know, the universe was infinite or not infinite.
I'd bring our attention to a Bruno story, David, while we're on this topic of, you know, he's at Oxford, and the Oxford Dons are like, "Who the hell are you, bro?" And one of them literally goes back to their office and pulls out Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, brings it back into the room, and is like, "Hey, bro, everything you're saying here is just boilerplate sorcery, basically." And that's a far cry from, you know, he's dying for the belief in an infinite physical universe, or something like that, you know.
Yeah, and for him, sorcery too. I mean, and that's also, like, we need to deculture that from what we think of it now. Sorcery back then, it meant specifically the use of the stars to map out timing and time periods, and then how you would then, you know, manipulate events through the beneficial, you know, influences of the stars and the astrology in that. And again, tied to, you know, if you think of astrologers being at the court, all of this stuff is tied to the powers that be. And we're really just, I mean, we're seeing, you know, interestingly, like, you know, we say, like, we're regressing into the Middle Ages with some of the stuff that's going on politically in that. You know, like, the internet comes out of, like, Lull and Arabic mathematics. So Raymond Lull basically designed the very thing that happens to be the structure of AI and machine learning, and this is in, like, the 1200s or something like that. You know, so he's early on kind of designing that concept, and his whole idea was that would bring about the apocalypse. And then you think about marketing and that being essentially the tools that are used in religions, and that it's really interesting. We're so saturated with this stuff, and it's been stripped of its kind of mystique. But if you go back and look at these older times, you see the exact same, and actually in some ways better understood things being implemented.
And now AI is being used to attract the opposite sex. Do you remember, what was that thing you sent, Willow? You remember you got a message from a guy?
Yeah, that was really terrible and made me feel like, oh God. there's a new features on dating apps now where instead of actually typing out a message, you can have the AI suggest a message to send for you. I'm like, what's even the point?
But what
What?
was you sort of ran an
Did you get
experiment
in?
on it.
Did you get an AI? Were you hit on by AI then, or?
It was a real person, I believe. Who knows these days? But the message was so obviously like not made by a person. I can't remember the exact verbiage, but it gave me full body cringe. Like my body actually had a fight or flight response to this message. And I thought like maybe I should go, because like what if I showed up to the restaurant and there's just a phone sitting in a chair? There's not even a person.
It's like an old tape recorder, and you have to hit the play button, and it sort of starts the date for you.
Yes.
Didn't you say something like, wasn't your response something like, "Oh, I'm summoning the old gods" or something like that? It was some H.P. Lovecraft reference. And then instead of sort of getting a normal response to that, you got I can tell you're a.
I can tell that you're a unique and creative person. Perhaps we should talk about this more over dinner. After I just told him that, like, I'm going to open up a portal and all of the dumbasses and assholes are going to be left behind in the old earth. He's like, oh, that's, you seem like a unique person.
We're doomed. We're really doomed. If this
man.
We're going to have AI arranging our dates for us. That's not good. Really
Better than your parents.
What's that Disney
film?
Where there's like a robot that I can't remember what it's called. Where
Wally?
Where all the humans just float around like these kind of.
They don't even do anything anymore. They're just super lazy. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels maybe like we're going in that direction a little bit. But what about this Peter Thiel thing? Like, why is he obsessed with the Antichrist? I haven't really looked into it. I know I keep seeing people commented on he did like a tour apparently and toured around doing talks on the Antichrist. What's that about?
We're talking about like the Nietzschean Antichrist or like Southern Baptist Antichrist?
Thiel is really Catholic. Like he's a serious Catholic. It doesn't make sense. Not to maybe it does, but it's actually because he's such a public figure. There's actually scholarship developing around the Thielian Antichrist idea, and if it's coherent and if it all makes sense. I think it's an interesting example of someone who's very good at business, stepping into domains that they feel confident in, as they feel confident in business, and confidence works. You can bluff and bluster and be confident in business and make a lot of money, but the build fast and break it kind of model doesn't really work in philosophy. It doesn't really work in intellectual life. You gotta actually be grounded in things, and I don't know because I haven't engaged with it that much because I don't. It's
doesn't he think Greta Thunberg is the Antichrist, or at least an agent of?
Yeah, he might think that. Well, yeah, because I think he thinks that ideology that she represents would be an aspect of the Antichrist. And I think that the cognitive dissonance comes in with the AI and the Palantir and all the rest of it, where it's kind of a weird thing for the person that is behind a lot of kind of dystopian tech to be saying that the person that is saying that we should protect the environment is the Antichrist.
Right.
It's a really weird. You get into weird spaces with this stuff.
He's also like an immortalist.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He's also into this sort of like pan racism that's like common between Russia, the United States, and certain parts of Europe, which it's like the 10 nations of the North or whatever in the Book of Revelation. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but like it sure seems like he's the one trying to pull together the one world government where all the northern countries attack Israel and all this stuff.
He glitched in that one New York Times interview I think it's Ross Douthat, or Duhat, who's also a Catholic, but he asked him about that, and Teal glitched, like he couldn't, like it. he hit the Fnord there. He was like, oh wait a second, like this is not, there's a cognitive dissonance here, and he wasn't able to bridge that gap necessarily very smoothly when he was asked about, you're talking about the Antichrist, but it kind of seems like you are, you're exactly what you're talking about, and he blew a spark and like couldn't really like come up with a good answer to that. And I don't think that it was disingenuous that he was like hiding some hidden agenda. It literally looked like he hadn't fully thought out the fact that he was doing exactly what the Antichrist would be doing, or an agent of the whatever layer of Antichrist would be doing, and he just hadn't thought that out. And again, it's business people. Business people are not public intellectuals, but because of digital and because of our culture, we think that they are, and we allow celebrities to pretend that they're intellectuals, and now we're allowing business people to pretend that they're intellectuals. And you can be really good in one domain and really, really poor in another. And I think it doesn't help that Karp at Palantir is a social philosopher, and that's actually the tradition that he comes out of. He does have studied in that, but again, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily very good at it or that you fully grasp what you're doing.
It's funny because him and various other people, like who's that Mencius Moldbug guy, Curtis Yarvin, they all tried adopting Nick Land's kind of philosophy for a while, didn't they? But they did it kind of badly. I remember whenever Curtis Yarvin's debated, he just falls to pieces. It's the same with Theo as well. When he's debated, he falls to pieces. It's like they can't quite grapple these concepts properly. Like they just sort of see them as useful tools.
Did you see the clip of Curtis Yarvin talking about the YouTube video that changed his life?
No, I didn't see that.
He talks about how he saw this video on YouTube and it was so impactful, and it was clips of like trash and war and devastation and like a moving classical sad song behind it. So all of this negative footage of like humanity's pitfalls, but then interspliced with that was pictures of smiling SS officers. And he said that it made such a huge impact on him and it gave him hope. And he's like talking about this in an interview. And I can tell the people like next to him are like, bro, what the fuck? Like, he just sounds so dumb. Like, really? That worked on you, sir? That's all it took?
That's like Clockwork Orange, like when they've got his eyes, put drops in his eyes. That's what he was watching.
Yeah.
So, God.
And it worked on him.
Whoa.
Well, that was easy. That's if only we could just reprogram people so quickly and positively, and not that way.
Yeah.
That's and that's it. Like these people, need to have some more structured domain. Decentralized was great for a while, but I think we need to get back to some structure and like reestablish that, like, if you're a business person, you may not need to be talking about ideas. Like maybe just stick to the books, stick to your companies.
And what's interesting is the new counterculture or whatever, the Joe Rogans, all these people, they all seem to like entertain these people and these ideas and defend them in some cases. Like Duncan Trussell, the comedian who appears on many, many podcasts, he's was very kind of one of us, I'd say, at one point, very much so.
One of the earliest podcasters.
Yeah. And but he was defending Peter Thiel recently and got in quite a lot of trouble for it. And he was like, why? Like, why would you defend that guy? Why would you, why? It's like I was saying to Raymond, it's like turkeys, promoting Christmas almost. It's like, these are the people that are going to be first in line in a way. It's like, like all the occultists that have suddenly gone very right wing.
Yeah.
Almost seem to be part of this kind of cultural Christianity movement. And you think, well, hang on. That's the movement that traditionally doesn't like people like us,
right?
And tries to get rid of us. So where's the end game? What's the point? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me in the slightest. Like, why would you? I understand, for money or sort of popularity, maybe it makes sense, but it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know.
I think one thing that people support Teal within that domain, like Duncan Trussell and that, because he runs that Hereticon thing, and he is very focused on free speech and opening up the ability to have ideas, and I think that's attractive to some people. You know, I think that can be attractive, and he does have his hands, you know, in a lot of the kind of current what would you call it, the loyal opposition counterculture, you know, the counterculture that's not really counterculture but appears to be because it's got like a trucker cap on, you know, and like, I mean, yeah, I think it's, you know, and also, I mean, he probably throws good parties, you know, and I'm sure that, you know, at a certain point,
I doubt it.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I guess that's true.
I mean, maybe they're like opulent, impressive looking parties, but I can't imagine that they're any fun or that the food is any good.
That's okay. That's a better, I think that's a better take. That you were right, Willow. Yeah, that's a good. You're opulent and impressive. And
but the free speech thing is definitely a big sticking point for a lot of people, and also anti-immigration. Like, you can get a lot of people just on those two topics.
Yeah.
Because it's nice to have a scapegoat for why shit's fucked up. Like, why is there a housing crisis? Why can't people afford to live? It's kind of, I think people search for a convenient scapegoat.
Yeah.
And they want to believe that these billionaires are going to help us. They really do want to believe that.
Well, they've got the answer.
And it's weird. I mean, that's another great example of just the beauty of PR and marketing and world shaping. Because, like, if you, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think I'm probably I'm comfortable up to like the millionaire level, but like once you start to interact with like people who are like richer than that, like it's a different worldview, and it's almost like you did travel to Mars. That you're like dealing with like this weird space that really makes no sense, and it's not structure. Again, there's no structure to it. Like, you're not like approaching royalty or something, which has some kind of protocol and structure, but you're approaching someone who is existing in a way that has a ton of responsibility, but also a ton of freedom, and it's not really well organized. And like, they've been allowed to have ideas that people tell them are good, and it's a very weird space to be in, which I guess is the
relationship to desire is all screwed up, where life is just, I have a feeling of something that I want. I get it. I have something else that I want. I get it. That's the way these people live every day. Every day.
Your camera's disappeared, by the way, Raymond. Raymond, your camera's vanished.
Don't worry, I'll be right back.
Oh, okay.
It's a weird space that we're all in here. Ken, you mentioned turkeys and Christmas. That was a very British thing. That was interesting. I was like, wait, turkey's Christmas? What is that? And then I was like,
I told him the same thing, that I had never heard that before. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Do you not eat turkeys at Christmas?
No. It's like ham and like,
we ham at Christmas.
All right. Is it like a New Year's? No, what's your thing? Thanksgiving. Is that where you have a turkey?
Yeah, that's a turkey on Thanksgiving. And honestly, it was great because like, and there's a whole Sherlock Holmes story, which is tied to the loss of a Thanksgiving turkey, or I'm sorry, a Christmas turkey. See, my brain just immediately goes to American Thanksgiving. So you brought it. I suddenly felt like I was in like, you know, like Dickens era, like London there with the Christmas turkey and that. But that's my reference. It's like old BBC period dramas with people eating turkey.
So turkey's very much a Christmas thing here still.
I had turkey on Christmas, so
yeah, I think we're more open in I mean, we don't have really, I guess, you know, like turkey, ham, like whatever you want, you know.
We also had a ham. So
was it a honey baked ham?
Or yes.
It was okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, it was a spiral ham.
Very bougie.
Yes.
I can't afford no honey baked ham here. Tell you what.
Yeah, we had to crowdfund it.
We started a Substack so we could have a honeyback tan brush here.
GoFundMe.
That's right. That's right.